and tell us what you think. I'll be looking forward to hearing from you.
We're jazzed, John.
We're jazzed.
We're jazzed.
We're jazzed.
Let's do it.
We're jazzed.
Release the pod.
God damn it.
What's
Okay,
wrong?
there we go.
Oh, headphone.
Headphone went out. God damn these stupid things.
Really stepped on our jazzed thing.
Yeah, no, I think we got it. I think we got it.
We're still jazzed.
All right, let's get to the news. Last night, ABC News aired George Stephanopoulos' interview with James Comey, who is just 6 feet, 8 inches of pure moral rectitude.
Sanctimony.
That's why he's so tall. He's actually 5'1". It's 1'7", and it's all made of how fucking good he is.
The former FBI director, a Republican, said that Donald Trump is morally unfit to hold office, that he lies all the time, and that it's possible that the Russians had material that could be used to blackmail him. He also defended his actions in the Clinton email investigation, which we can all agree were perfect. Guys, did anything surprise you about this interview?
It's so funny to be. We live in a world in which the answer to the question about an FBI director saying the president is morally unfit and may be compromised by a foreign government as a real snooze fest.
Yeah, like the factual. I guess the tone and the language surprised me a little bit. Like there was nothing new factually that I thought was particularly interesting. Like I was sort of. There's a bit of snake in Comey. Like when he said, look, I'm not one of those guys who says Trump has dementia, that he's like has a failing brain. I think he has above average intelligence, and then goes on to criticize him for being an immoral president. And that's why it's like you're leading with repeating the charge that is the thing you're then saying you don't believe. It's a little gross. I think like there weren't a lot of new facts in this interview that weren't in the letter or the memos that he leaked. What drove me crazy was the fact that he was willing to render judgments on literally everything but his own conduct, and like it didn't feel like there was much introspection.
Closest he got was saying, I have problems with my ego. I'm always worried about that. That like, am I listening to others when I'm making decisions, or I'm just doing stuff myself? And so that's what he threw out there is like him doing wrong stuff. Lovett, what'd you think?
So there's been one question that James Comey has answered in the past that he answered again last night that has always been the focus of my ire, which is if you knew that the letter were like Donald Trump, would you still send it?
You're talking about the famous October 28th letter about Anthony Weiner's laptop, which was somehow became a thing in the election in 2016, as we all remember.
Anthony Weiner. Thanks again.
Thanks again, Anthony.
Thanks for the memories. Where's Tommy going?
Tommy's taking off his clothes.
Oh my goodness. Dear diary.
It's hot in here.
You never believe what happened in the studio today. Jesus Christ. So Comey said to Stephanopoulos, So Comey said to Stephanopoulos something similar to what he said in the hearing, which basically he would do the same thing over again.
Yeah.
And
he basically said he would do literally everything he did over again.
Which is incredible. So I was really stuck on this, and John and Tommy saw me kind of working through my thoughts out loud in the room because I was just like so frustrated.
He was finger pointing in the
Imagine
air.
a conductor. One of those little sticks.
So here's what I was working out. All right. So Comey said he sent the letter in part because he expected Hillary Clinton to win, and that if he hadn't sent it, if the facts came out after Hillary became president, it would make her election less legitimate. But then he also said he couldn't not send the letter because then that would have been allowing politics to interfere with the FBI. Even though sending the letter, he's admitting is for political reasons. But okay, so that's confusing, but put that aside. It's important, but put it aside. So he sends the letter because he wants to have sent it after Hillary wins. But he'd still send the letter even if the letter means she lost. So not sending the letter means she wins, and therefore he should have sent it. But sending it means she loses, so therefore he should not have sent it. And the reason I think that this is ridiculous.
I feel like this was on the SATs.
Yeah. No, but so it's you kind of get, this is to me this is where you find why James Comey made such a big mistake. It's sort of the like logical fallacy at the heart of what he's doing, because he can't just admit that he never should have sent that letter and he never should have revealed one investigation but not the other. Because I think Comey sincerely believes in his mission. He sincerely believes these are the values that he's trying to espouse, but what's clear when he says that he would have sent it anyway, even though the only reason he sent it was to have sent it had Hillary won, is because he's not trying to be ethical. He's trying to seem ethical. And that is the fundamental flaw of what James Comey did at every step of this process.
Yeah, I thought
agree.
I thought one of the most revealing lines from the interview was he said, one of my kids shared a tweet that's become one of my favorite tweets, and it said, "That Comey is such a political hack, I just can't figure out which party." And I really took that as a compliment.
Yes.
And that is the classic.
Hashtag no labels.
I was going to say, it's this very Washington elite mindset that you get from people in government, that you get from the media, that we saw in 2016. And the problem is not just that everyone assumed Hillary would win. The problem is that because everyone assumed Hillary would win, the political and media elite decided that they would be extra tough on her to prove how nonpartisan they are, because they all celebrate balance as the highest virtue. More than truth, more than anything else. Like, they must be balanced. And what that means is that people on the right, no matter how low they go, no matter how much they lie, they can count on the fact that if they work the refs hard enough, they will damage the other side.
Yes. On top of that, he also says that the fact that both sides hate him now is an illustration of the polarization of our times. No, the Hillary people hate you because you broke DOJ guidelines, intervened in an election just days before it happened, and maybe tipped it to Donald Trump, the most unfit president to ever hold the office. The Trump people hate you because he savages you by name over and over and over again, because he tried to obstruct justice with you and now is mad at you. That's not the same thing.
The Trump people don't like you because they were afraid you were going to expose his rampant criminality.
Yes.
That's a different thing.
Thing.
The Clinton people criticize you for your conduct and the outcome it caused, which is Trump being president.
Yeah, and by the way, just because he made a gigantic mistake in the Clinton email investigation doesn't mean that the criticisms from the Republicans that he's some lying hack slimeball are correct.
No,
it's not.
no.
He fell victim to this mindset that he must be, like you said, he must appear ethical, and he took, even though he said he didn't want to take politics into consideration, even though he said the one rule he's tried to obey is to not do anything that will impact an election. He said that. He said that in the interview multiple times, but he said in this case, the only option was to either reveal or conceal this letter.
This thing he said for a year.
When that was not the option could have been, it's DOJ policy not to do anything that will impact an election right before an election. And then after the election, if she won, all he had to do was say, by the way, we looked at some emails, we didn't find anything, and that was that. And if they did find something, then they could say, at the time, we didn't want to do anything to impact the election because we didn't know it was in the emails.
Or we hadn't figured it out yet. Yeah, exactly. Figure it out first.
And by the way, James Comey, you're going to have to, as the Joker would say, you're going to have to break your one rule because you didn't tell us about the Trump investigation, the many Trump investigations, the many different facets of his crimes.
I will say I thought he was persuasive on why it was a little different on the Trump investigation, because it was a counter-intel investigation involving some Americans that you didn't want to reveal, and actually revealing the investigation and who they were would have compromised the investigation itself. And the Hillary investigation was a public referral from the Inspector General, so it was already public and he couldn't avoid it.
But all of that is parsing. You said you didn't want to be political, but you chose in the week before an election.
Oh, the letter is unfucking forgivable in every way.
And so I don't, James Comey said this other thing in the interview where he talked about, he said, there was once a day when people were afraid of going to hell if they took an oath in the name of God and violated it. We've drifted away from that day, and so in its place has to be a fear that if you lie and government can prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, they will prosecute you in order to send a message. You must tell the truth that matters enormously.
Oh, boy.
It's self-righteous. Yeah. It's the way in which James Comey is frustrated. But what I appreciate about James Comey is I believe he is sincerely grappling with what he sees as a culture that doesn't value the truth, a culture that...
He's right about that.
Yes, he is absolutely right about that. And we've talked about it. We not put it in terms of God, we've put it in terms of shame. But I believe James Comey is a good person. I also believe we should... that he was in a difficult position created by Hillary Clinton, and a difficult position created by Donald Trump, two people who were under investigation. I just believe it is obvious in hindsight that his fears about partisanship, he got in his own head and he completely botched it and mishandled it. And he's the only person who can't admit it, because to admit it would be to concede something so grand and so big about his role in history that it's he can possibly do it. If to admit it is to say that everything you ever did led you to make this terrible decision that caused one of the greatest political emergencies in American history.
I thought another small thing that was interesting from the interview was he said that Trump refuses to criticize Putin even in private.
I love that.
Yeah.
Even in private.
Which is getting corroborated by other officials and other stories.
Yeah.
I don't even get that one. Like, that was like, okay, all right, Putin's got something on Trump. Does he think he's in the Oval? What's going on? What are you afraid of, buddy?
To me, it was just like the pathology of Trump, like thinking that if anyone believed that the election was somehow illegitimate and that he didn't win the popular vote and all the crazy things lies he believes about himself, that bothers him. Yeah. I mean, one thing that was really interesting that he talked about was the dinner they had, how essentially just a Trumpian monologue, which I always assumed was the case.
Right.
But it was just like Trump spouting random lies at the FBI director that he doesn't really know. And Comey just sort of sitting there and having to listen to it. And like, I could get how weird and how that could get you into a weird headspace too. The one thing I thought was pretty interesting that Comey did concede was I credit him for, he conceded that pledging honest loyalty in the infamous meeting where Trump tried to demand loyalty from him was a mistake and could have been misinterpreted. I thought that was actually kind of a good thing to be honest about.
I also was interesting how tough he was on Rosenstein.
Look at you.
For his role in firing him. Said that Rosenstein acted dishonorably. But then he said that he didn't think Rosenstein would carry out the order to fire Mueller because he's trying to restore some of his professional reputation.
Yeah.
Which is a sort of a common... I mean, I could see that, but
to
it's interesting that he
Tommy's
just guesses that.
But to Tommy's point, it's like, Robert Mueller, I'm sorry, Robert Mueller is James Comey without the bullshit. No, James Comey. James Comey's in the balcony kind of like keeping a little count of balcony. What are you in a baseball thing? Mezzanine?
Bleachers?
He's in the bleachers.
Press box?
Balcony. I'm
The
at the
mezzanine,
opera. The
common
point is, when
sports
you keep score during a
sure.
sports game?
We're
Anyway,
following.
the point is, he's up there being like, oh, Rod's worried about his reputation, and oh, Hillary had this. It's like he's this pilgrim in an unholy land.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, what is this book, man?
Yes.
It's just an effort to restore your reputation.
Exactly. There's some little lies in there that just annoyed me. Like, he says when he put out his memos after Trump tweeted, "You better hope I don't have tapes." Comey had his buddy release memos he'd taken at the time. He said that the reason he had his buddy leak them is because he didn't want to say yes and talk to one reporter and then tell the rest of the reporters that were at his driveway that he couldn't talk to them. I thought that was just such a ludicrous effort at concocting some moral reason for his choice that it like undercut half the rest of it. Now,
It's a classic Comey, frankly.
all this aside, like I don't like Jim Comey very much. I don't hate him. I do think like you that he's a decent person. I think he has terrible political judgment.
Yeah.
I think his letter indisputably impacted the election. I'm also reminded that Bill Clinton's meeting with Loretta Lynch was such a mistake and there's such a massive inflection point. And like whether or not it was spun up to something that it should have been, oh my God.
I also
He was not thinking very well there.
Bill Clinton?
Yes.
No, really screwed the pooch on that one.
Poor choice.
But I also, to your point, that in the interview, he talks about that bedside moment with Ashcroft, and
Which is fascinating.
You should go read the transcript about it. But it's also, James Comey is also the person who stood up for principle there. And so what I also think is wrong is because James Comey has caused this disaster, I think it could be too easy to dismiss him outright. And I do think it's important that we maintain a complicated view of James Comey.
Yeah, I mean, look, we talk all the time about voters as pundits now. It's also something that infects like bureaucrats and law enforcement officials and other people in government. Like when you see the world like a pundit does, and you start judging based on politics, and you let the politics get in your head, you're not going to make a very good decision.
Yeah,
I think that's
James Comey stopped being FBI director and became a pundit, and it may cause the downfall of our country.
Jim Comey drafted a letter because he went to 538 and figured, we're good.
But on the other hand, that means he did see Nate Silver saying that letter did cause the outcome. He read it.
Stephanopoulos brought it up to him. He said Nate Silver has a pretty compelling case for why it cost the election. And Comey, he said something righteous. I don't know. Anyway.
He said, I only read the printed page.
Let's talk about Michael Cohen, because it was a very tough day in court for team crime. A federal judge rejected an attempt by President Trump and Michael Cohen to block prosecutors from reviewing documents and communications that the FBI took from Cohen's office and hotel room. The judge also forced Cohen to reveal the name of the one client he had tried to keep secret, and that client is longtime friend of the pod, Sean Hannity.
Surely not the Sean Hannity from television.
The very one, the same.
Let's bring out the corkboard and red string here. Where does Hannity fit into this puzzle, guys? What? Why?
He's the piece that the dog got and you didn't need anyway.
He's
in terms of the puzzle.
We know Michael Cohen's not a real lawyer. He's a weird fixer who buys taxi cab medallions and does other strange businesses. The two pieces of business he did that are relevant here are essentially hush payments to a very senior RNC official, and for Donald Trump. We don't know what he did. We don't know what work he did for Sean, but I mean, it doesn't sound good.
Michael Cohen is a lawyer in the same way Sean Hannity is a journalist.
Right.
By the way, too, like all these people on Twitter now are like, is Sean Hannity going to recuse himself from talking about Michael Cohen? What is this? I'm like, yeah, no. Up until today, I thought Hannity was a real straight shooter. The James Comey of Fox News. That's what they call him. Like,
recuse himself. What's he gonna swear an oath? What are you talking about?
Why isn't Fox News punishing him? Because he's a fucking psycho who goes on the air every night and says whatever the hell he wants to say.
He said that Hillary was in cahoots with Whitey Bulger.
Oh, we're all so disappointed that Sean Hannity didn't reveal to us that he was using fucking Michael Cohen's legal services.
It's actually revealing.
What a shocker.
They talk on the phone every night.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so disappointed.
It's so revealing, too, that literally no human being on Earth was like... it's just like, oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense. Moving on.
Sure. What a
Sean Hannity's explanation is, I think once I gave him $10 and asked him for real estate advice, and that he must have taken that as attorney-client privilege. Yeah, no.
Yeah, I'm sure.
No,
that's what you do when you submit documents to a court.
Well, so how screwed are Michael Cohen and Donald Trump, do we think? Like, why work so hard to keep federal prosecutors from even reviewing the information seized in the FBI raid before they could review it first?
I don't know. I mean, Donald Trump doesn't email. Who knows what written documents he has? I think what we know is that Donald Trump has a business empire that is built on working with a whole bunch of corrupt people around the world. It is a total shell game. Like I don't think he's actually a successful businessman. I think he's likely engaged in potentially criminal activities via his businesses, and Michael Cohen would have the receipts. We also know that Michael Cohen's not a very good lawyer. He's incredibly stupid. He created these shell LLCs to make these payments, and he used the same one over and over again, and that's how he got busted.
For the hush money payments.
Yeah, he's not a scrupulous individual. He's not like crossing a lot of T's and dotting I's.
Tommy's got the understatement of the pod. Not a scrupulous individual.
I was also thinking, like, the Weinstein investigation, and what came out of that investigation was that some of the most respected lawyers in the country were engaged in despicable and criminal or near criminal behavior. What we're learning is just how much criminality goes on every single day for powerful people like Donald Trump, and they just were not ready for this kind of scrutiny. They just weren't built for it.
Yeah, I mean, DOJ also confirmed on Friday that Cohen has been under criminal investigation in New York for months because of his business dealings.
Which, by the way, I mean, Donald Trump calling him, whatever he said could have been picked up by the FBI. There's a very good chance it was, if he called from his like random Android phone from executive time, could have been picked up by a half dozen foreign intelligence services. I mean, this was a monumentally stupid thing to do.
Yeah, there is a reason that what's gotten Donald Trump the most upset about Mueller and all these investigations is every time the business stuff comes up.
Yep.
This is why the tax returns weren't released. This is why the New York Times said that he tried to fire Mueller back in December because of the Deutsche Bank story, because they were going to get records from Deutsche Bank. This is why he's went crazy last week about the Cohen raid. This is why the New York Times story also said that this is the investigation they're most worried about in the White House, more so than the other one.
His so-called red line that he drew in the interview with the New York Times reporters at the golf club.
About his business deals that he knows are criminal.
This is the part of the movie Conspiracy Theory where we find out that Mel Gibson is crazy because it all really happened to him, and and it's all very bizarre. Trump pardoned Scooter Libby because he was so passionate about the way this man had been abused by the system. Give me a break. And then he calls Michael Cohen, and then Michael Cohen just skips court to hang out with a bunch of goons in a park. We have no idea what that conversation is about. We have no idea what's going through Michael Cohen's dumb fucking head. I went to high school with a bunch of Michael Cohens, and I didn't know what they were thinking when they were beating the hell out of me. So whatever, I won't deign to understand. But when the Michael Cohen sitting in front of me in science class and the Michael Cohen sitting behind me in science class lifted up my desk and then dropped it to the ground just to get the teacher to turn around, I don't know why they did that either.
Feels like we just went to another place. Anyway,
I don't know why.
That's just like what happened last week.
I don't know why that Michael Cohen killed the fish for my science experiment that very same year. The point is.
End of point.
Because the Michael Cohen stories just continue. There was also a story on Friday, and McClatchy ran this, that Mueller has evidence that Cohen was in fact in Prague in 2016, which Cohen still denies, which would confirm part of the Steele dossier, which basically says that Cohen went to Prague in order to collude with Russians. Question about the story is no outlet since Friday has confirmed this. The story was based on two sources familiar with the matter. It seems unlikely that the sources would be from Mueller's team because they have not leaked. So there's been some question of, is this story true? Is it too good to be true? What did you guys think about the Prague?
I do believe.
Affair?
I do believe the smoking gun will be the fridge magnet Michael Cohen got for his wife. But other than that, I have no thoughts.
Yeah, one of those little balls you shake and it makes a snowstorm. The Prague Castle. I don't know. I mean, it is weird that no one else has been able to confirm this. It also just feels like the most easily knowable fact. Like, did you go to Prague or not? There will be flight records of your phone, like whatever it would be required to run something like this down, a passport, whatever. Even if he has a burner passport, even if you went through Germany into Prague because you used the Schengen visa and you don't have to get another, I don't know, whatever. We should be able to know this, and it's strange that McClatchy is out on an island on this one.
Yeah. So where does this all lead next? I mean, I'm talking to Adam Davidson a little bit about his piece, the end stage of Donald Trump's presidency. Basically, the theory is, we're about to see now what's coming with Cohen and all the business stuff. Like, this is where all this leads, and this is where the crime is, and what happens from here. And the question is, look, we have been here very doubtful that Republicans will ever impeach this president, ever. And even if the Democrats take back the House and even the Senate, we're needing 66 votes in the Senate to impeach the guy is a tall order. Is it still a tall order if there are multiple crimes of money laundering and all kinds of business stuff? I don't know. What do you guys think?
I don't know. I think it's, we have to, even on this, remember to stay out of the prediction business.
Yep.
We have very little control on this to this day. We still have very little information compared to what Mueller has, compared to what's happening in New York. We really just don't know enough. And there's also very little we can do. The only upshot of anything we learn in the next 6 months is do whatever it takes to win the House. Yeah. Do whatever it takes to win the Senate. There's no...
All roads lead back to the House.
Right.
No matter what, whether you're talking about Mueller, tax cuts, healthcare, whatever else.
The impeachment's a political decision and would require, and we know that Trump's approval is locked at around 43%. His quote that he could shoot someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue has proven to be true time and time again, and he wouldn't lose supporters. The people in Congress that we need to vote in support of an impeachment range from crazy to coward, and the ones who are relatively brave are retiring. So I think we need to plan for a huge one in the midterms that gives us a chance to run a whole other series of investigations in the House with subpoena power that can bottle up his agenda and continue to make him just be ineffective, and then we kick his ass in 2020.
Yeah, I also there was this debate about the Adam Davidson piece, and I'm excited to hear your conversation. And it was, there were the Nate Silver and some others saying, oh, is this too rosy? Because how is this going to play out in terms of politics? And that's an important debate. But my reaction to it was sort of separate from that, which is what is after the initial shock of Trump becoming president wore off, there was a period of time that has always been the period of time that to me is the most terrifying. And it is the time between Trump being out of office and Trump knowing that his days are numbered in one way or another. And the stories are salacious. It feels good to see the words end stages about Trump. It feels good to think that there might be justice, that these people might pay a price. But I do think it's always important to just remember that Donald Trump is the most powerful human being on planet Earth. And it's dangerous every day. And the more he's cornered, the more dangerous he gets. We've already seen him make decisions on Syria that, whatever the merits some people claim about these strikes, we cannot take at face value because we know what motivates him, and it's certainly not care for the people of Syria.
Yeah.
And so that's just something just to keep in mind and to remember how bad our situation is, even if things do start coming toward an end.
Yeah, because one end stage of Donald Trump's presidency is that he is, it's clear that he has committed a number of crimes, and yet he remains in office because they won't impeach him.
Yeah.
And so then we have a real constitutional crisis where the president has decided that he is above the law and he has committed crimes, and yet he is still the president. Yep. That I read that and thought, like, well, this is certainly one outcome of this piece. I didn't see it as some like rosy prediction.
No, I know you didn't
all,
either. And the other thing too is we also don't know what happens when there start to be charges at the state level out of New York, and we don't know if that's going to happen or not. But if that were to happen, and all of a sudden Donald Trump realizes that the pardon power he is familiar with and that it knows is his and knows is unlimited, basically with the exception of impeachment, is in his back pocket to promise people. Once that's removed, I don't know what he'll do. We just don't know.
Yeah. You mentioned Syria. We did launch an airstrike against Syria on Friday, even though it seems like that's 5 years ago.
It sure does.
Let's talk about this. Tommy, why did the U.S., France, and the UK do this? What was the goal? Mm-hmm. Will it make a difference?
They made the choice the three countries to get together to launch these strikes because Assad, again, used chemical weapons. He used chlorine gas, maybe a mix of chlorine and sarin gas, on a group of civilians in sort of one of the last vestiges of Syria that he's trying to clear. It was a little bit bigger than the last strike. The last strike was on one runway. This one was on 3 targets instead of 1. There were twice as many missiles. It was basically chemical weapons facilities. It wasn't all of his chemical weapons facilities. We avoided areas where Russians or Iranians could also be working, presumably to avoid a retaliation. It's good that it was a coalition, but I think the key with these foreign policy decisions he's making is we should try to do a better job, the media writ large, about judging outcomes and not sort of events as they occur. If this strike prevents Assad from using chemical weapons ever again, I think that's a good thing. Everyone gave him credit the last time he struck in response for chemical weapons use, and it happened again. So obviously it wasn't successful, despite declarations that this is the night he became president and sort of the orgy of excitement on cable news panels. Chemical weapons are treated differently by the international community because they're just horrific and indiscriminate killers of people, civilians, kids. The videos are awful. I think we should be honest. Trump probably did this because he saw it on TV, because there are horrific attacks on civilians every day, not involving chemical weapons, that are killing 500,000 plus people.
And apparently,
Syria?
after the strike, Assad went on and just started, launching his regular attacks.
Yeah, they dropped
killing civilians.
They dropped barrels full of bombs and shrapnel that just destroy people, destroy communities, destroy hospitals, whatever it takes. They targeted journalists. We learned recently and tried to kill foreign journalists. So, the criticism of the broader strategy is that he doesn't have one. And that the limited presence we have there is involved in taking out ISIS, and he wants to pull them out too. There are no easy answers here. Hopefully this will deter chemical weapons use because it's horrific, but, we should wait and see.
Seems like it hasn't in the past.
Has not in the past.
Lovett, you have any thoughts on Syria?
I don't. I don't have any thoughts. I think it's there's a lot of confident people on the internet per usual, but I don't have any thoughts on it sincerely. And the only argument I did find persuasive is a lot of people noting that if we truly believe Donald Trump is unfit, and we do, if we believe he's not in any way someone with the facility to make decisions of life and death, that he shouldn't have that power, then it's quite a thing to turn around and say, I support the strikes, because you're supporting someone making decisions that you don't trust, having this power in his hands. And so I don't know. I think it's really hard. I don't know what I would think if Hillary Clinton were launching these strikes. I think I'd be similarly skeptical. But I do believe that there is a really strong argument for saying that I will not support Donald Trump taking any military action unless it's for the direct defense of the United States.
I also think there's a good argument to be made that many Democrats are making that a president shouldn't be able to launch strikes like this unless they get an authorization from Congress. And this is why Barack Obama didn't end up striking Syria, is because he went to Congress after Republicans said, strike Syria, launch missiles, whatever. And then he said, okay, well, give me the authorization, vote for it. And they're like, oh, no, we're not going to do that at all. And I think that the thought behind that was that presidents have built up too much power to go to war whenever they please. And especially in case you have a Donald Trump as president, that the president should go to Congress and get an authorization for war.
I think that's right. And I would also, though, point out that Barack Obama did try to have it both ways, because what he said is, I would like Congress's authorization, but technically I don't need it.
Yeah, and we also took strikes in Libya without necessarily getting authorization. I mean,
but
it's complicated. Like, I don't feel the need to weigh in for or against. I'm sort of surprised when I see so many people tweeting this was right, this was wrong. I do think we don't know the outcome, so it's really hard. I mean, I guess you can grade sort of an individual choice and say I support that, I don't. I think that's our job. But broadly, the situation on the ground is not materially different today. There is still no strategy. There is no plan to do better. I realize that Obama didn't fix it. In fact, he left Trump a pretty impossibly difficult problem to deal with. I'm not in any way proud or happy of the outcome in Syria, but he let in 11 refugees this year. There's a way you could help people and save lives. It's very easy. That doesn't involve launching $200 million worth of Tomahawk missiles.
Right? Yeah, and just to go back to your point on military force, I think it's not just because Trump is president. I think Trump exposes just how strange our way of handling military force has become, that we've slowly marched toward a situation in which the president is basically a dictator on foreign policy, can act without any kind of authorization, can wave the hand and say, I have Article 2 powers. They're kind of in there somewhere. And it is a rare time where you can say a pox on both their houses. Both sides have done this, but it is really over decades that both parties have slowly but surely made it so that the president basically doesn't need Congress to launch a military strike. And because of that, Congress's responsibility and behavior has atrophied. Part of the reason presidents have not wanted to go to Congress is this understanding that Congress isn't up to it. Congress isn't going to be able to seriously debate this and come to the right decision. And Congress,
it's hard politics.
It's hard politics, and they won't take the vote. And so,
not even the Republicans that are on Fox News screaming about the need for an attack.
No, it's really based on who's president. And the people who have been consistent on this are actually people like Justin Amash, who is a right-wing conservative,
Tim Kaine,
and Tim Kaine, but what Amash, is it Amash or Amash? I don't know.
We'll figure it out later.
He noted that there were two letters that went out. When a Republican is president, Democrats write a letter saying you need Congress. When a Democrat's president, Republicans write a letter that says you need Congress. And it is dangerous. It is dangerous how powerful we've made the presidency, and we've talked about this before. But if anything positive can come out of Trump, it could be devolving some of presidential power back to Congress and back to the states.
Just James Comey that problem.
Hashtag no labels. Comey Lieberman 2020.
One other thing that comes from the Syria issue. After the airstrikes, UN Ambassador Nikki Haley announced that the U.S. will impose additional sanctions on Russia for enabling Assad's use of chemical weapons. And then today, Trump says, just kidding, he doesn't want to punish Russia. This comes in the heels of a Washington Post piece that revealed that last month, Trump became furious when he learned that the U.S. had imposed a harsher punishment on Russia for poisoning a former spy on British soil than American allies had. Such curious behavior, guys.
Yeah.
What is going on?
The other, not that anything's funny coming out of this, but Trump decided to say mission accomplished for some reason.
I forgot about that.
Just either reflecting a total indifference or ignorance of the history of that term when it comes to warfare. And then he tweeted, I knew the fake news media would seize on this, but it's such a great military term that it should be brought back. Use often. It was just such unbelievably stupid response.
Use often was so funny.
Right, me too. Yeah.
What? Oh, my God. Anyway, but that Russia stuff is like,
well, it was that he was screaming about it.
Every time you want to say maybe there's no there there. Maybe this is all just a conspiracy in our heads with Russia. Maybe there's nothing there. He goes and does something. It's just like
it's the only
what?
consistent
And you
thing.
know, I go and I read Glenn Greenwald writing about this, who's been a real contrarian on it and consistently contrarian on it. And I think, okay, maybe I'm part of a collective, what's it called, conventional wisdom, and we've kind of all deluded ourselves into believing there's something going on here, and then he just behaves just like somebody might behave if he thought that Russia had a bunch of shit on him.
Yep.
Yeah. So we'll see. Okay, when we come back, our interview with New Yorker's Adam Davidson.